The summer sun, warm and enveloping, shone on the small country church, an ancient and evocative building immersed in the green Tuscan hills. The golden rays filtered through the stained glass windows, creating a play of light and shadow that danced on the stone floor smoothed by time. The scent of fresh flowers, roses, lilies, and lavender, carefully arranged along the nave, mixed with the sweet and honeyed smell of beeswax from the votive candles, lit in honor of the community's patron saints. The air was filled with a delicate and intoxicating fragrance, which evoked images of flowering fields and secret gardens. But beneath the surface of this apparent tranquility, there was an air of tension, like an undercurrent that threatened to emerge at any moment. The guests, elegant in their ceremonial clothes, exchanged glances and whispers, as if they were actors in a silent drama, in which everyone played their part with skill. The ladies, with their elaborate bonnets decorated with feathers and silk flowers, and their glittering jewels reflecting the sunlight, fanned themselves with lace fans, trying to hide their nervousness behind an air of indifference. The gentlemen, in suits and ties, impeccable in their dark suits, wiped their foreheads with linen handkerchiefs, trying to hide their discomfort behind a forced smile. The atmosphere was full of expectations, of poorly hidden curiosity, of judgments ready to be pronounced. The eyes of the guests were focused on them, on the couple who were about to get married. It was an unusual marriage, a union that had caused a stir and gossip throughout the country. She, Elena, a beautiful and intelligent young woman, coming from a wealthy family, had chosen to marry him, Marco, a homeless man, a vagabond who lived by his wits and charity. The news of their engagement had spread around the country, triggering a wave of comments and inferences. There were those who spoke of true love, those of madness, those of interest. Some claimed that Elena had been bewitched by Marco, others that she was looking for strong emotions, still others that she just wanted to help a man in difficulty. No one could understand the reasons for that unexpected and unconventional choice. Elena's family was shocked, her friends in disbelief. They had tried in every way to dissuade her, to make her change her mind. But she was adamant. He had found something special in Marco, something that went beyond appearances, beyond social conventions. She had seen in him a pure soul, a noble heart, a brilliant mind, and she fell madly in love. Marco, for his part, was aware of being a different man, an outsider. He knew he wasn't up to Elena, that he couldn't offer her a comfortable life. But the love he felt for her was so strong, so intense, that he had decided to put aside his fears and doubts and accept his marriage proposal. He knew it would be a challenge, that they would face many obstacles, but he was willing to do anything to be with her. At the center of attention was her, Elena, radiant in her white dress, a dream of silk and lace that fell down her body like a cascade of rose petals. The fitted bodice highlighted her slender figure, while the full, airy skirt swayed with every step she took, creating an aura of ethereal beauty. Delicate lace, handcrafted with beads and crystals, caressed her porcelain-clear skin, highlighting her pale complexion and delicate features. The silk veil, long and transparent, framed her face with an aura of mystery, partially hiding her blue eyes, which shone with happiness and emotion. The smile on her lips, wide and sincere, was a hymn to joy, a hymn to the love she had found in Marco, the man who was about to become her husband. Next to her, Marco, a tall, thin man with graying hair framing a face marked by time and the elements. His hands, calloused and rough, were the hands of those who worked hard, of those who fought to survive, of those who knew fatigue and pain. He was wearing a dark suit, simple but elegant, which had been given to him by a friend for his wedding. It was not a new suit, but it had been carefully washed and ironed, and gave him a dignified and respectable appearance. The wrinkles on his face, deep and marked, told stories of suffering and resilience, of nights spent in the cold, of days spent looking for food and shelter. But his eyes, a warm, intense brown, were full of love and gratitude. They looked at Elena with an intensity that would melt the hearts of anyone who passed them. In those eyes, you could read the story of a man who had hit rock bottom, but who had managed to climb back up thanks to the love of an extraordinary woman. Elena and Marco were an unlikely couple, a union of two seemingly irreconcilable worlds. She, a girl from a good family, with a promising future ahead of her. He, a homeless man with a difficult past behind him. Yet they had found each other. They recognized each other. They had fallen in love. Their love was born slowly, like a seed sprouting in arid soil. They had met by chance, in a park, where he spent his days reading and she walked with her dog. They had started chatting, getting to know each other, sharing their stories. And day after day, they realized that they were made for each other. The chatter of the guests was a buzz in the background, an annoying buzz that Elena tried to ignore, focusing instead on Marco's loving gaze. But the sharp words, like poison darts, managed to penetrate his bubble of happiness, leaving a bitter aftertaste in his mouth. "He's completely lost his mind," whispered an elderly lady, her face framed by a black lace veil, shaking her head in disapproval. His eyes, small and inquisitive, scrutinized the couple as if trying to find a flaw, a proof of his theory. A girl like her, young, beautiful and rich, could have anyone. And instead she chooses him asterisk, he added contemptuously, indicating Marco with a gesture of his jeweled hand. "What will you find in him?" wondered another guest, a woman in her 40s with a too tight dress and too heavy makeup. He looked contemptuously at Marco, as if he were an object to be examined and judged, not a person with feelings and emotions. "Maybe it's the smell of the street that attracts her," she commented with a sour laugh, arousing the laughter of a small group of ladies sitting next to her. Some young people, elegant in their designer clothes, laughed under their mustaches, exchanging knowing glances. "I wonder what he promised her," one of them murmured, with a mischievous smile. "Maybe a warm place to sleep at night," added another, prompting a fresh wave of muffled laughter. Other guests, older and perhaps wiser, simply observed the scene with a mixture of curiosity and disapproval. They shook their heads slowly, muttering phrases like headache, interest, madness. There were even those who spoke of a curse, as if Marco was an evil being who had bewitched poor Elena. But Elena knew that those people didn't understand. They didn't understand the depth of her love for Marco, the strength of their bond, the beauty of their story. They didn't understand that true love doesn't need explanations. It doesn't need justifications. True love simply is. But Elena didn't care about those poisonous words, those whispers full of prejudice and malice. It was as if an invisible protective shield surrounded her, repelling the arrows of ignorance and envy. He knew, deep in his heart, that their love was true, pure, unconditional. A love that went beyond appearances, beyond social conventions, beyond the barriers that society had erected between them. A love that was born from a chance meeting, from a look, from a word, and which had grown day after day, nourished by mutual understanding, respect, and admiration. Marco was a homeless man, a man who had lost everything he had: his home, his job, his family, his dignity. A man who had been forced to live on the streets, to beg for a crust of bread, to sleep under bridges, to endure the cold, hunger, loneliness. A man who had been marginalized, mocked, humiliated. But Elena had not fallen in love with his social status, nor with his economic conditions. She didn't care if he didn't have a bank account, if his clothes were shabby, if his beard was unkempt. Elena had fallen in love with his heart, his kind and generous soul, his ability to love and forgive, his strength of mind, and his resilience. She had fallen in love with his acute intelligence, his vast and profound culture, his passion for literature and philosophy. She had fallen in love with his extraordinary sensitivity, his ability to grasp the nuances of emotions, his empathy towards other human beings. Elena had seen a light in Marco that no one else had noticed, a spark of hope that still burned under the ashes of despair. She had seen in him a good, honest, intelligent man, a man who deserved a second chance, and he had decided to give it to him, to hold out his hand, to help him get up. He had taken him to his home, washed him, dressed him, fed him. He had listened to his stories, shared his pains, soothed his wounds. And day after day, she realized that she had fallen in love with him, that she loved that man with all of herself. Their love had blossomed unexpectedly, like a rare and precious flower in a barren desert. It was a love that defied convention, that surpassed barriers, that broke the mold. A love that was scary, that scandalized, that aroused envy. But it was also a strong, true, authentic love. A love that would resist everything, that would overcome every obstacle, that would triumph over every prejudice. Marco was a cultured man with a passion for literature and philosophy. He had studied at university, had a prestigious job as a literature professor, a loving family with 2 beautiful children. But a series of unfortunate events, including the loss of his job due to a corporate restructuring, the death of his wife from an incurable disease, and a serious car accident that left him with a partially paralyzed leg, had led him to edge of the abyss. He had lost everything: his house, his money, his self-confidence. He ended up on the streets, forced to beg to survive, abandoned by friends and relatives who couldn't understand his pain. Elena had met him by chance, in a park where he used to spend his days reading the classics of literature, trying to find comfort in the words of the great authors. Intrigued by that man with the sad but profound look, she began to talk to him, to get to know him. And day after day, she realized that she had fallen in love with him. It hadn't been easy. Elena's family had opposed that relationship with all its strength. Her friends had warned her. Society had judged her. But Elena hadn't given in. She knew that Marco was the man of her life, and she was not willing to give him up for fear of the judgment of others. And so, that day, they were there, on the altar, ready to pronounce the fateful yes. While the priest recited the ritual formulas, Elena looked Marco in the eyes and saw in them all the love she felt for him. He saw her strength, her vulnerability, her hope, and in that moment, he knew he had made the right choice. When the time came to exchange vows, Marco took the microphone and addressed the guests. His voice was calm and confident, but trembled slightly with emotion. "I know what you're thinking," he began. "Many of you are wondering why a woman like Elena would choose a man like me. The answer is simple. Love doesn't look at appearances, but at the heart." He went on to tell his story of how a series of unfortunate events had led him to the streets. He spoke of his loneliness, his desperation, his daily struggle for survival. But he also spoke of his hope, of his faith in a better future, of his will to never give up. "Elena gave me a second chance," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "He saw me for who I truly am, not for my circumstances. He loved me when no one else did. And today, I stand before you, no longer as a homeless man, but as a man who has regained his dignity, thanks to the love of this extraordinary woman." Marco's words touched the hearts of everyone present. Tears ran down Elena's face, while the guests burst into liberating applause. In that moment, everyone understood that true love does not need riches or social status, but only 2 hearts that beat in unison.